and welcome to the Wellness with Juanita podcast. I'm your host, Juanita Nagai, an American living in Japan for 20 years. I've gone through some massive life changes and crises in my 20 years here. At its bleakest, I felt very isolated, alone, and helpless in the face of what was happening. I relied on alcohol and cigarettes to get through it the best I knew how, which worked until it didn't, and everything fell apart. I made it through with a little help from my friends, a fledgling mindfulness practice, and learning how to become my own strongest ally. I quit drinking and smoking, worked my way through my grief, found ways to forgive, created new connections, and started a regular exercise, meditation, and self-care routine. I've also become a national board certified health and wellness coach along the way, and developed a desire and passion to help others on their own personal journeys. This podcast is all about change, growth, healing yourself, learning how to get back up after life kicks you down, and exploring mindfulness and self-compassion as incredible tools available to each and every one of us to do just that. Hello, and welcome to the Wellness with Juanita podcast. I'm your host, Juanita Nagai. And today I want to talk to you about starting where you are and doing the thing. And I keep thinking, unfortunately, of the world famous Nike slogan, the just do it, which is annoying because it's really, really good, but annoying that, such a multinational, huge, evil company has kind of co-opted it forevermore, because there is really a lot of truth and beauty and simplicity in that phrase, which is why it was such a hugely successful ad campaign, right? But it's the essence of what I want to talk about today, and I'm going to talk about it in the context of me and myself and my experience and my story. And as I've been contemplating what I wanted to talk about, I have a sneaking suspicion that this episode may or may not be a kind of my story part 2, in that it is May, it is my birthday month, and I have been reflecting on where I was 7 years ago. So this month I will be turning 47, which is surreal, and I can't quite wrap my mind around that. However, that means 7 years ago, it was my 40th, and I actually celebrated it at this little local amusement park called Suzuka Circuit in Mie-ken. Our neighbor, who shares a very similar birthday to mine, her birthday's the day after mine, she really wanted to go and ride the little kiddie dirt bikes. And at the time, my husband was living in Mie Prefecture, and so we decided that we would take the weekend and do the Suzuka Circuit, and we could stay at the apartment he was living at. And it happened to be Suzuka Circuit's 40th anniversary, which was entertaining and hilarious. And so we took lots of pictures with me in front of the, 40th anniversary celebration signs. And I distinctly remember sitting with everyone in the sunshine, taking a break on one of the benches, and just laughing so hard, and realizing how long it had been since I had laughed like that, and how little joy I was experiencing in my life at that time. And I can tell I'm already getting very emotional thinking about this and talking about this, but that is why I wanted to, because I was in a really bleak, dark place then. That may have been my lowest moment, not necessarily my birthday, but I do recall sending a voicemail message to my best friend the night before that birthday that was rather dark. And I couldn't even quite bring myself to be 100% honest with her as to how low I was feeling. And when I asked her about it later, years later, and said, do you remember that voice and I sent around my birthday that year? Her reply was that it wasn't just one, it was numerous messages and voicemails and months of despair and sadness and frustration. And what I can now understand was me flailing around, desperately trying to not accept my reality for what it was, and just kind of caught in the web or net of overwhelming grief and all of the accompanying emotions that went around with that. So for that 40th birthday, I would have been coming near up to a year and a half of that flailing and struggling and just not even being able to come up for air, really, is how I can think of it now. Just absolutely no clarity or awareness of what was really happening, or even like the vocabulary to name it, just desperate not to feel what needed to be felt. And so I was drinking to oblivion every single night and chain smoking and feeling really isolated and alone. And bless my bestie's heart, she was there for me as much as she possibly could be, just interrupting her own life, I'm sure, a lot to be able to be there for me, because she knew and understood how important it was. But she was in another country, and that was the closest lifeline that I felt like I had. So it was not a good place to be in, and it was a really dark time. And so I've been reflecting about that because it is coming up to my birthday again. It's coming up onto 7 years since that point. And I think shortly thereafter is when I did kind of take the step to reach out for help, and reached out to the friend that set me off on the path of mindfulness and meditation that I have spoken about at length in other episodes. So I will not go there today. But what I keep coming back to is realizing how I could only start where I was. Like literally that tagline that I use for my business, to start where you are, is the bedrock and is the key. Because if you had told me then that in 7 years I would have my own business, I'd be running regularly and doing yoga and meditating every day and all of these things, like what my life is now, just the daily normal thing, let alone that I wouldn't be drinking and smoking, I would never in a million years have believed you. That would have I would have laughed in your face. Like, why would I be running for fun? Like, why would I do that to myself? It was so absurd at that point. So I couldn't have started with, okay, we're going to start running or something. I needed to get to this place where I am now, which is so much better. I needed to get there in my own time and in my own way. And I needed to just take the steps and just do it and just start, just doing the actions. So this is something that has come up because over spring break, my daughter was home for 3 weeks. It was an extra long spring break because it's in between elementary and junior high schools in Japan, which is fine. She's 12. She can take care of herself. I was able to do my own work and do my own things, but just having her around and having an extra body in the house interrupted my regular routine, my regular schedule. I also wanted to take advantage of this special kind of last chance time before she gets so busy with everything that happens in Japanese junior and senior high school. So I wanted to spend time with her, and I wanted to prioritize her presence instead of prioritizing maybe like doing Qigong or whatever on a certain day. But I wasn't able to do all of my regular practices in the same regular, consistent, routine way that I normally do. And by the end of that 3 weeks, I was feeling a little crappy. Like I was starting to spiral out in my mind. I was starting to feel panicky and kind of anxious and pressed about any number of stories that were going off in my mind. And I was just feeling kind of low in general. And as my coach very wisely pointed out, what she heard me saying was that I was not waking up first thing in the morning and doing my meditation. I wasn't going for runs. I wasn't doing yoga. I wasn't reading or doing my self-paced courses. I wasn't doing all of my self-care practices in the same regular, consistent way that I have been doing. Like what is now just incorporated into my daily life was not happening for totally understandable reasons. And so it helped me to understand and to see how very vital and important all of that is to me, and also how it is an ongoing process. It's not like I just, learn to meditate and then I stop and it's going to stick with me, right? Or I started exercising and, started journaling and I've done it 10 times and now I can stop. Like that's not how any of this works. All of the self-care, all of the self-compassion, all of the healthy habits that I have built up, I have to continue to do them. Like they might change and they might evolve. I might, decide I don't want to do X, Y, and Z for a while and I do this instead. But I need to continuously keep doing them if I want to have them support me and be this kind of scaffolding and the kind of base of what my mental health and well-being is now. That is just the way it works. It's just like we have to feed ourselves nutritious food every day, and we need to drink enough water every day and get enough sleep every night. The times that we aren't able to do those things for whatever reason, we very much can feel it even more so if we are practicing mindfulness and if we are aware of how it is affecting us in our bodies and in our minds and even spiritually or emotionally and mentally. And in the past, certainly 7 years ago, I would not have been aware of how it was affecting me. I was just so overcome with strong, heavy emotions and desperately trying not to be, that I was ignoring every sign and signal that my body was giving me, that the emotions were trying to blare at me. I was just shutting it all out as best I could. And I understand why. And I can forgive myself and offer myself compassion for that reaction. I'm not judging that. I'm just stating the fact that I was definitely not listening to my body or my mental landscape, or it was just so muddled that there was nothing to hear, maybe, until I started taking steps that led me down the path to start like opening up the door of awareness little by little by little, but really slowly and really gradually. And I guess when it's 7 years, it is a lot easier to look back and see a kind of very stark before and after. But even 6 years and 10 months ago, I'm not sure that I would have been able to see really anything at all, right? It's when we have this wider lens that we can really kind of use hindsight as 2020 vision and all of that. But when we're on the path, when we are starting out and anywhere along the middle, one day kind of looks like the next. It's when those days that we find the way to actually do the thing start to add up, is when we start to feel first and then later can see the progress and the process. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, because for me, where I needed to start and what worked for me, the process as it were, was that I did get curious about mindfulness meditation as a way to help me, maybe, like, or just offer some kind of peace or presence or maybe reprieve from everything that was going on in my mind. And I started by reading. I started reading a lot of books, and eventually that led to realizing, okay, you need to actually just meditate. Like, it's not going to work to continuously read these teachers and read about the process or read about what people experience with it. The best way to experience it is to actually just do it yourself. And so I started to experiment with that. And at the time, as I mentioned, my husband was living in another prefecture, and it was just me and my daughter. And she was 4 at the time, 4 or 5. And so I needed to wait until she went to sleep at night in order to meditate. And so that meant I couldn't drink that night. I couldn't come home from work and immediately grab a beer or 2, which was my habit. I wanted to meditate, and I wanted to experience it, and I wanted to experiment with it and see what was there. And so that is what got me to stop drinking on certain evenings. I decided I'm going to meditate tonight, so I can't drink. Again, not a clear, clean, linear process. I'm sure there were nights I had that intention and then I ended up drinking and then I didn't. But that was kind of the beginning of the process of me not drinking all the time and starting to stop. And from there, I was able to quit smoking, which again was a very long, difficult, not linear, clean, cut and dried kind of process. And in the midst of that, then there was also the pregnancy loss. And so that was another wave of grief and competing emotions and all of this stuff that was happening. But I had started to build that base of mindfulness. Ironically or not, I did not meditate when I was at home on bed rest or in the hospital dealing with all of that. I knew it was there. I knew it was a tool. But at that time, I think I also knew that holding still and sitting and being with my thoughts was not what I needed. I didn't have enough of the skills and the support and the understanding to hold myself in the compassionate way that I think I probably am able to do a bit better now, let's say. But anyway, what I am trying to get to is that it was a very slow, long process of quitting drinking and then quitting smoking and then starting to ride my exercise bike. And I don't even remember, like, the running and the yoga and these different practices kind of slowly started to emerge. And I realized every time that I did one of these self-caring acts, that one, I could do it. That is absurd and laughable as it seemed to me in the past. I absolutely, totally could do these things. And that I felt better after I did it. And this is key, and this is something that I really want to emphasize and highlight. On another podcast, on the Rich Roll podcast I have been listening to lately, he said, mood follows action. And I was just like, yes, exactly. This ties in with the just do it thing. Because so many of us, we think that we have to wait for inspiration or motivation or to like be in the mood to do the thing, whether that is meditate or go exercise or, have the difficult phone call. We're kind of waiting for our mental fortitude to get prepared and strong enough so that we then have the reserves to do it. But has that ever happened to you? Have you ever had something that you don't want to do and then magically you get in the mood to want to do it? I don't know what the statistics are on that, but I'm going to say it's very, very slim. What actually happens is that we just do the thing. We find the way to do the thing, and then afterwards, we feel great. Afterwards, we have the motivation and the inspiration and the feeling goodness that we thought we needed to start, but it actually comes afterwards. That's just kind of the way that it works. And for me and my mindfulness practice, what helps with this is that the more mindful we are, just in general all the time, but in those moments as well, when we are feeling good after a run, or we are feeling accomplished or satisfied, or I can do this, I did it, right? If we notice that and recognize it and kind of try and imprint it into our body and our mind as best we can, as Dr. Rick Hansen talks about it, take in the good. I think that's what he says. If we're mindful of how we actually feel after doing the thing, that is what creates the kind of subtle, almost unconscious motivation to do it the next time. It's the way that our brain is working. It's reward-based learning. So the reward is that we feel amazing after we go out for a long run. For me, I love going running. It's more a choice of do I want to go for the normal, boring, local daycare loop, which is also lovely and beautiful alongside a river, or do I want to take the time or waste the time to drive to the beautiful dam that's in even more nature and run around that? Whenever I do drive up to the dam, if I have that extra time, the drive time, it's so worth it, and it's so beautiful, and it's so peaceful. And I just love running in the nature and hearing the birds. And there's usually one or two cars parked along the way practicing their big loud instruments that they can't do in their normal Japanese houses. So there's the trombone guy and there's a saxophone guy. And I just see people walking their dogs. I see couples taking their morning stroll. It just feels good. So I know that experience is worth it, and I know it's going to make me feel good. And so that's why I'm going to want to do it again in the future. It's the same thing that I try to teach my clients in the Nourish group program that I run. If we can bring more mindfulness to how it actually feels when we say, for example, binge eat or something, you feel disgusting and awful and bloated and sick and all of these things, but we usually just push those feelings away, or we eat more to try and deal with that shame loop, right? But if we can sit with it and realize how we actually feel when we do a certain behavior or don't do a certain behavior, that is what motivates us and inspires us to do it again or not in the future. And so mood follows action. We want it to be the other way. It would be much easier if it was the other way around, but it's just kind of not how it works. If we do the behavior first, then the feelings and the emotions follow. And those feelings and emotions are what teach our brain, this is rewarding. This feels good. I like this more than the other way. And slowly we train ourselves to continue to do the behavior, and it becomes a habit, and then it just becomes part of who we are. And that is what I am living proof of. I was just so low and despondent and despairing, and doing everything in my power to reject that fact, and just doing everything that I possibly could to negate reality. I hated my job. I hated the fact that my husband was not with us. I hated the fact that my mom had died, and I still had no idea how to even begin to process that grief. I just hated so much about my existence and my life. And in the way that I dealt with that was with booze and cigarettes. And I hated the way that I felt. And that was the original impetus or motivation for me to try something different, because I just really hated the way that I felt. And I was finally able to articulate that to myself, even if on a kind of like unconscious or subconscious level. And as I started to change these behaviors, and as I started to become habits, and certainly now that they are just kind of part of who I am and what I do, that feeling better has just gotten better and better and better, exponentially, by leaps and bounds. I wish I could show 7 years ago me the day that I had yesterday. Just the ease and the peace and the joy that I have created, not only in a kind of like external way. I mean, yes, I am taking care of my body, and yes, I have also changed my working situation. Those make a huge difference to my mental kind of interior state as well, of course. But for me, that is what is the core and the most important, or the way that I've always been in the world, is here, right? I've definitely always lived from the neck up. And that inner landscape is so much better than I think I had any concept of even. I'm really struggling for words, because the only way I can think of how to say it is that I just feel so much better. Like, I feel so much simple contentment and joy and peace. And it's almost like colors are brighter, and the sounds are crisper and more clear, and I just have so much more love and gratitude and compassion for the people that I see around me, and for myself, even though I also know I have so much more to go. It's like we say, in personal growth work, or in therapy, or in coaching, it's like an onion, and the layers that you kind of peel back, and you learn more and more about yourself, and we're evolving in that way. That is a really great metaphor. I have also heard it discussed or described as a spiral. I also like to think of it that way, that we go around a lot of the same things, a lot of the same stuff is what our work to deal with. The essence of our experiences and our personalities and our childhoods and all this stuff, our thought patterns, like this is kind of the middle of the spiral, and it's always going to be there. But as we go around and around, we're going up and up, and we're evolving, and we're progressing, and we're healing, and we're also expanding. And so I like that idea of the spiral, because it really feels to me, it is like an expansion. If I think about 7 years ago, I was very much constricted and contracted and almost collapsed in on myself. There was no awareness and no clarity, and just pain, just like pulsating pain and hurt. And almost like a seed in a garden, from that dark, constricted, contracted, collapsed in on myself state, slowly, I have started to kind of emerge out of the dirt. Little shoot has come up out of the ground. Maybe there's some leaves. Maybe I'm starting to flower. I don't know how far I want to take the metaphor, but it is certainly a release and a letting go and an expansion and growth, up and out and ever forward kind of a vibe. And that only has happened because I have been doing the work, and I've been taking the steps, and I just keep doing it. And so that is where I wanted to take us today on today's episode. For today's takeaway, I encourage you to think of one tiny little action, one tiny little thing that you can start experimenting with. What's one tiny thing that you can try and do every day for the next week? Maybe it's just turn your phone off 30 minutes earlier before bed at night. Maybe it's drink one more glass of water than you usually do. Maybe it's start the day with a hug. Give your loved ones a hug every morning. Whatever it is, one tiny action that you can do, and see how you feel at the end of that week. Just experiment with it. See what it does for you or doesn't do for you. And if you are curious to continue this conversation, or are like, what the heck are you talking about? How do you just do it? How do you get the motivation? How do you convince yourself to start in the first place? Please reach out. You can email me, send me DMs, or leave a comment. I am always happy to talk to people. It's not easy. One of my coaching teachers said, if it was easy, everybody would already be doing it. It's not that it's easy per se, but it is pretty simple. We just got to figure out what we want for ourselves, and then create some steps to go in that direction, and then do it. And if you need help with any of those steps, I am accepting one-to-one clients at the moment. I'm also always just happy just to chat and see what's coming up for you and where you'd like to go. I am always here. You can find all of that information in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate all of the support. Until next time, take care.